Welcome to Payments Playbook, the show where we explore the strategies and systems that drive smarter payments, stronger cash flow, and more profitable business. Brought to you by Paylink, the business-to-business payment experts. Now let's dive into today's episode. For today's episode of Payments Playbook, we have Danny Walsh with Exon. Welcome, Danny, and thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Paul, for inviting me, and I look forward to chatting and have a meaningful conversation, and we'll see where this takes us.
That sounds great. Why don't we start with, can you give a little background of Exon, what you're all about, and we'll go from there.
Great. First of all, the solution that we come up with called Exon, I think of it as an advanced project and portfolio management system. And it's based on a philosophy called the theory of constraints, called TOC.
Yep.
So that's the basis. And of course, we're built on that we founded the company and went into production 15 years ago. And we have grown ever since then. And we continuously upgrade our solution to leverage all of the new technology that becomes available. So we're very current and been able to offer a better, more rounded out solution to our users.
Okay.
And it can be used as a single project, multi-project, for example, in a portfolio of projects in a company. In fact, we even have what we call the multi-portfolio solution. So we have some of our users, large customers, they have, for example, internationally, they have different divisions, and you can roll up all of that data in real time, be able to look at all of the individual portfolios in the different divisions, no matter where they're at.
Cool.
And very, very powerful. And we have a well-developed business analytic capability to allow you to take a look at not just the current projects, but be able to look back. And for example, we have customers that have been doing projects with Exon for 15 years now.
Okay.
So they you store all of the projects once they're finished.
Oh, really? So there's no lifetime? You can keep them? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Forever. So you can imagine all this mega data that's available now to the company.
You bet.
For analysis, for comparison, for help them make better decisions, both in the short term with the current project or projects that they're working on. This is very important. But to be able to reach back at any time and look at all the projects that they have finished and be able to access that instantly also for comparison. So, for example, I'll give you a few examples of some of our customers where they go after certain projects. It turns out that they're not particularly the ROI is not particularly good, but they really don't see that. And we allow them then to be able to look back. So, for example, the financial part and be able to analyze at an individual project level, which includes the project they're currently executing or past projects that they've finished, and be able to instantly access at the individual project level, or let's say a group of projects, which would represent the same type of projects that they've done in the past, or if they want to look at the entire portfolio over the last 15 years, they can do that also.
Wow.
The trends, etc. And it can be very useful where they get a much better understanding of which type of projects are really contributing to the bottom line in the company.
Right.
When they see this, what the ROI is. And so that's just one of the many features that we have. Of course, this is all possible because obviously we're using the internet and we're in the cloud, of course. That's the only way you can get access to the power of being able to access this data very quickly and the storage, which is essentially unlimited of data.
Right.
And we include that as a full service when they use our product. So they have that for the life of, as long as they're using our product, they can access all that data. And that's just one small example. And I will tell you that if you look at all of the companies, different types of industries that are using Exopron, if you look at the original planned start date, the cycle time from start to finish,
Yep.
we have an excess of 94%, almost a 95% on-time delivery of the project when it was planned. The original plan date, not the latest plan date, the original plan date, with anywhere from and planning, going back to planning, with probably a 40% shorter cycle time. So the
Wow.
life of the project is 30 to 40%. So you can imagine the impact that has on the bottom line in the company. So if you do the same amount of work at 30, 40% less time, even in the really difficult projects, let's say, we see 20% is probably the least amount of time they can cut down on the cycle time.
Sure.
So this is in order to do that, we challenge some of the conventional thinking that's being taught today and advocated by many professional societies in the project management field and in academia. They're wonderful people, but they're many years behind what's really happening in the world.
True.
So this is all possible. And what comes as a real surprise to many people initially is if you were to ask me, what is the single sector, industry sector that is using Exopron the most? And the surprising answer would be in a company that's either a manufacturing production company,
Right.
or has a significant part of the company entails production. So it replaces the old master scheduling paradigm
Yep.
by using project management. So that's an emerging field that now more and more people are starting to understand the benefits of it.
Sure.
So those would be some of the highlights. And the other thing is so at the very beginning, we focus on keeping our solution user-friendly. In other words, it has to be easy to use.
Yep.
And no matter how powerful a solution is, if it's not easy to use, people eventually will not abandon it, or will abandon it, or they will partially use it. But we go to great lengths to make it user-friendly.
Yep.
So that, in a nutshell, is the big picture of what Exopron does and why it's different than other solutions that are in the market today.
Well, if you're showing a 94+% on time,
Yeah.
to me that's huge. I've been on projects and they've got derailed, and I mean it's cost as well, but just the on time part has been problematic.
Exactly, and the surprise cost overruns, and
Right.
whereas with Exopron, with the cost data, you track it from day one. In fact, it's an integral part of the planning process that you put in at the task level in the project, what the cost of each task is, and not only the cost, but also the margins that you get off of that task, depending on what type of contract you have.
Right.
So, for example, if you have a time and materials type of contract or earned value, things like that, where you get paid per task accomplished, it can accommodate that. Or any other type of contract that you have with, if you don't get paid to the very end, we can accommodate that also. But of course, it's very important that you understand how you're spending that cost versus what you plan to
Sure.
exactly. So that's an important feature, and it's much overlooked. And having experience as a project manager myself, you know, your job's always in jeopardy if you're a project manager. And the one thing that I've found, this is my personal experience, the one thing that'll get you relieved or fired quicker than anything else is if you're not managing your budget well.
Oh, yeah.
And if you do have an issue with budget, the earlier you identify it, then the better off it is for everybody.
Yep.
But what Exapron does very uniquely and very effectively, rather, is we turn all this data that's being collected, both starting in planning and then in execution, and in real time we provide information and intelligence to the users of what's actually going on in the project.
Okay.
So what we're trending, we're starting to see a disruption in the flow of work. Let's say you're producing something, then there could be physical things that you're tracking. In other environments, it could be if you're developing software. Well, software, it's not that clear as you're down there in the developing lines of code, et cetera. So it can be very helpful in that environment also. And if you're in a new product development where you've got ideas that you're trying to get your arms around. So it can be very effective in virtually every industry sector that we know of.
Yep.
Another important distinction is with Exapron, it allows you to move from what I'll call the analytical world into the digital world. So if you look back at the way most people develop a project schedule, let's say, well, you kind of know what you're going to be building.
Right.
So you start out and with very common, you get a whole bunch of yellow stickies, you put them up on a whiteboard or on the wall, and you start to move them around.
Right.
And then you come out with kind of like a PERT chart, then you turn that into an actual schedule and you need some sort of software to do that. Well, we kind of build on that, and that's, but a lot of the change that we ask people to undertake question some of the things that they've never questioned before. And I'll give you one good example. So if we were to ask people, give them a blank sheet of paper and say, okay, we're going to start this project. Now we know what the end product is, the deliverable. Okay.
Right.
Now just show me, and I'll step back and I'll look at them and say, okay, just show me how you would develop this project. Well, they would write down a whole bunch of tasks on the yellow stickies, right?
Right.
Okay, right, a good start. And then it's okay. Then they would start putting them up on the wall or the whiteboard. And I can tell you, 99 times out of 100, what they're going to do is they're going to start on the left side of the screen or the board and say, okay, this is the first task.
Right.
Okay, then here's the second task, and here's the third task. And then they'll connect them up, of course, with lines. So they have the predecessor-successor relationship established. Very important. But what we suggest to people with our solution, and we make this very easy to do with our software, because you can do all of this inside of the software. You don't need to put the yellow stickies on the wall. We provide you with the what yellow stickies inside of the planning board when you're building your PERT chart. But we show people the importance of not starting on the left side of the screen and going left to right, because it kind of like, if you can envision going on a journey.
Right.
What do you do? Well, I know what the first thing I'm going to do. This is the first step. Then here's the second step. Here's the third step. The problem with that is, if you ask another person on the team, they'll say, okay, we agree on the first step, but the next step is not that. The next step is this. Then the next step is that. So because it's based on their experience and what they bring to the table.
Sure.
So what we show people, and it's very easy because the software facilitates this, say, no, you need to big paradigm shift. You need to start with the final task. So everybody needs to agree on what the final task is. Okay, this is, when you finish this task, this is the exit criteria. The project's done. Because many times people keep working on projects and the project's finished. They just keep working on it. They want to refine it, but it's over.
Right.
So you start with, as Stephen Covey said, start with the end in mind, the first of the 7 habits, right? So you put the final task up there, And that final task represents exit criteria. As soon as I finish this task, the project's over. Then you go build the project right to left.
Yep. All right.
So now what does that do? Well, it eliminates this discussion of if you go from left to right, you say, well, I start with this task, then I go here, then I go here, then I go here. When you build from right to left, so you use logic, okay, you say, in order to start this task, the final task, what task must I finish before I can start this task? Okay. I finish this task. Okay. In order to start this task, what task must I finish? Well, there's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 different pathways. I need to finish this task, and this task. Okay. So now we have the predecessor. So we have this logic all the way to the very end, which is on the left side. And that will be, once you put that PERT chart into, or convert it into an actual schedule, we call it critical chain, which is another big change. So it's a finite scheduler. So when we're building this network, we identify the task, okay?
Yep.
And the task is touch time with no variability, no safety inside of the task. So we ask the team to just focus on touch time and also to identify the resources required to accomplish that task. And then just look at one task at a time. You don't have to look at the whole project.
Right.
One task at a time. Then you keep working to the left and you run out of tasks, right? And then you generate what we call, instead of calling it a critical path schedule, we call it a critical chain schedule.
Interesting. All
So
right.
a critical chain, a critical path, of course, is the longest path of task dependencies, right? Predecessor, successor.
Right.
Okay. Critical chain is a little bit different. We define it as the longest chain of task and resource dependencies. So because the resource dependency is just as important as a task dependency, because if you don't have the resources and you don't schedule the resources, chances are you're going to come to a halt very quickly in the project.
Yes.
So we do both, and then it generates a critical chain instead of just a critical path. So it looks a little bit different, and it's not important, at least at this point, that we really go any deeper than that, but it is different.
Howard, the question I have is, the big buzzword out there right now is AI. Are you implementing or adopting AI at all?
Absolutely. And it's an integral part of our solution. As I previously mentioned, that we're adapting all the latest technology that's out there. And to go back to the beginning, 15, 16 years ago, when we sat down with a clean sheet, right? So we recognized that in order to do what we wanted our solution to do, we would have to obviously use the internet, but we had to be in the cloud. That's where you got the processing speed and now, I wish I'd known at the time. We were probably one of the very first adapters to really recognize, at least in the project management space, that this is where the future was. But what I did not recognize at the time was that most of the software or most of the technology solutions that were being developed were going to be developed with the cloud in mind.
Right.
So looking back, say, "Oh, you're a real genius there, Danny," but I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
But it turned out that way. So we were always on the leading edge, still are, with all of the new technology that's being developed. So we could adapt to it very quickly. Same with AI. When AI came about, or became popular, we did recognize was a game changer again. So to answer your question, yeah, we did adapt to it. We did adapt to AI, and it's an integral part of our solution. So everything from helping you to build the basic project network, to do the things that I just described, and many other parts of the software solution that we have today. Now, another differentiator, if you can imagine this, was it's just inconceivable if you're using the conventional critical path methodology. So if you go back and look at where critical path, and I kind of had a bit of a background in operations research, and they've been doing critical path methodology for a long time.
Right.
And then it became more in the public's domain or knowledge. And if you look at what today we look at is the conventional project management based on critical path. So, and if you look at some of the pioneering work that was done by many people, Stanford University was really on the forefront of this. And they developed these algorithms. And then, of course, Microsoft came along and they developed Microsoft Project. So they codified all of this thinking. Okay.
Yep.
Very powerful, major breakthrough in its time. So that it really hasn't changed that much in how many decades it's been in existence. So the good news was they really provided a very powerful solution decades ago. Bad news is it really hasn't changed that much, and it cannot do what I just described.
Right. Yep. No, I agree. 100%
Now,
agree.
of course, now what we can do is with companies that, of course, they've got 85% of the world's market in project management, is with using our Exon with APIs, you can import a critical path, let's say a Microsoft project schedule, into Exon, and then we have a place where it goes to, and then we can, there's things that we need to do before we can turn it into a critical chain schedule. I'll give you a couple examples. One, with the critical chain in an Exon, the critical chain solution, every task has a successor task, except for the final task, of course. Every other task has a predecessor, which means they have a successor task. Well, so Microsoft Project doesn't care. It'll let you, so you can do a whole string of pathway of tasks, and then all of a sudden you get to a task and it ends. So why did you do that task? Well, because I had to. It's amazing. So you got all this stuff that creeps into there to a critical path generated. So that's just one example that we look for that. And we're looking for other things without getting too technical. The other thing that a typical Microsoft project, it just drives me nuts. They have what they call recursive logic. In other words, if you look at a task A, so the task B,
Right.
a task B goes to task C, then task C is a predecessor back to task A. So you're in a circular loop that you can't get out of, right?
Right.
But the thing about software is once you put it in there, it takes on a life of its own and nobody questions it. So, yeah, okay. But it's illogical. So those are the kind of things we check for, and it red flag them and say, no, you have a recursive logic in here. You need to correct that. Or, hey, you have a task out there that doesn't have a successor. Well, you need to take care of that. Why are you doing that task? Oh, well, that's a predecessor to this other task. And it's important, things like that. And then we extract the safety out at the task level. In other words, let's say the people who are building the schedule say this is a 10-day task. Well, so as you're building the schedule, I'm talking back to planning, you say, well, is that real? I'm really just after the touch time. Just put blinders on. How long will that take with no interruptions in the assumption that the resources are going to be there? All the technical data you need is going to be there. So, in that case, and there's no variability, it'll take me 5 days. Okay. So now, sometimes I may run into problems that it may take me more than 5 days. That's okay. We'll take care of the variability for you. Just give me the honest to goodness touch time. That we know with a reasonable certainty, right?
Right.
Now, so when variability is going to hit the project, we don't know. Nobody knows. Right. Because most of it's common cause variability. You can't eliminate it. You just need to manage it better. So what we do as part of our solution is we provide what we call time buffers, and we put them in different places that allows you to accommodate this variability once it hits. So you're protecting the overall project system,
sure.
Right?
Yep, yeah. Makes sense. And
at the very end of the final task, we have a big catch-all, we call it the project buffer, that's just there for everybody to use. So even with all of that buffering that I'm talking about, as long as you extract the safety, we still end up with 20, 30, 40% shorter cycle time.
Wow.
Okay.
That's impressive.
That's how we manage the variability. That's what counts. Okay. And then as long as it's common cause, hey, you're going to be covered. That's the only way you're going to finish in 94, 95% of the time on time,
Right. Right.
on the original schedule. So they talk to people about, in fact, we go into companies and say, well, what's your on-time delivery record? I don't know, 50, 60, 70% on time. Well, as being an experienced implementer, red flag goes up immediately. As either one or two things: they don't have a clue, they're not tracking it, or they're polishing the cannonball, as we used to say in the Navy. Right?
Yeah.
There's no way you're 60, 70%. Okay, but in their mind. But then you ask the next question. You say, well, okay, 50, 60% of the time, is that the original schedule? Oh no, of course not. No, nobody does that. It's the latest schedule. Because if you look at the critical path, since they very cleverly ignore variability, okay?
Right.
So what people do over time, right, they embed safety at the task level because they know there's going to be variability inherently, right? So they just stuff it in there. We call it safety. So we want that to be extracted. Now, if you're in management, right, that the terminology changes. It's not safety. It's called management reserve, right? Or management prerogative, right? It's safety.
Right.
So we say, well, that's crazy. We don't know that because we don't know when variability is going to impact. So we take that safety out, and then we're aggregating that safety. And then we put in these little time buffers I talked about. So we aggregate, it's like an insurance policy, right? They aggregate, right? That's how they can stay in business. So we do the same thing. And then you can measure how well the project is executed by looking at how much of this time buffer that you're penetrating. And then with control limits, you have a better understanding of when you're in trouble or when it's acceptable variability, because that's the only way you're going to finish the project. And the other thing is, this is amazing. If you're using Microsoft Project, every time you update a task, like to the remaining time, whatever, the critical path will move. Now I have a new critical path.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So then you have these little tools that are called critical path analysis, and you say, well, what are you analyzing? The original project schedule, the critical path, this one. So it changes every time. Now, if I were to tell you, and these are very large projects and small projects, but very large projects, the critical chain that you establish when you start the project is the critical chain that you finish with. It does not move because we're managing variability. So even when you update the project at the task level, right? You update and say, this is how many days I have remaining.
Yep.
Critical chain doesn't move. We got it covered because of the time buffers and other technical issues that, we won't get into today. So that's the power of the solution that we're talking about. And we have some small companies that are using our solution, and we have some medium-sized and some very, very large international well-known companies that are using Exon. And they'll see the same kills.
And your business model is your SaaS model. You pay a subscription. Okay.
Yep, your SaaS model. So we provide everything. We provide the servers and what have you. We have a few exceptions with some large government programs I won't get into because of security issues. They have to use their servers, but we can accommodate that.
Okay.
And then because of our API capability, we can electronically connect with virtually any third-party software solution. It doesn't matter. In fact, one of the things that when you use our software with Exon, we have a little portal that you can just go in there and yourself. I'm talking at the company level themselves. They can just themselves, follow the bouncing ball, say, I want to connect to this piece of software or whatever, and it does it electronically, transferring data back and forth real time. So
very cool.
Pretty much a non-issue. And then the other thing that I would say about Exon is we have a very high retention rate. And we have, if you were to ask people, kind of what's the thing to like most about Exopron, besides the fact that it really helps them. We have excellent customer support, and I have to say that 24/7. We have clients all over the world, literally.
Okay.
So,
Very cool.
that's a pretty fast-paced thumbnail sketch of what Exopron can do, but it is truly, in our eyes, it's revolutionary. And why the whole world is not using this methodology and our software, well, that's our problem. We need to figure out how to.
Yep. Well, they don't. It's one of those. You don't know what you don't know. They don't know it's available, and hopefully, after this conversation, we post the podcast, some people find out more about it.
Well, hopefully so. And this is people like yourself provide a very valuable a piece of the puzzle these days. Been able to get that out, get the word out, and get people interested and maybe exploring it further. Hopefully.
Yep.
But it's the financial impact is very, very significant.
Oh, I can believe it.
I mean, if you could do the same project at 30% quicker with the same amount of resources, that goes right to the bottom line. I mean,
big time.
Big time. And being able to compete on projects that are very time sensitive, it gives you. In fact, one of the features we have with Exopron, while you're in the planning stage and you lay out the whole project network, so now you know all of the tasks have been identified, what the predecessor success relationship is, the duration, what resources are required. And then from there, literally with a click of the mouse, you turn that PERT chart within seconds, you'll turn it into a schedule.
Nice.
A real critical chain schedule.
Very nice.
And before you do that, you can select what level of risk you want in the schedule. We're all about risk management, all right? So let's say you want a risk with a schedule with virtually very minimum risk. Then that's what we're going to give you.
Okay.
And let's say you're going to, after a project, you're responding to an RFP, and the project says, hey, here's a list of important things you have to be aware of. Number one, on time. Or there's a bonus for bringing it in on time or early. Then before you turn this plan into an actual schedule, then you can dial in different levels of risk to shorten the schedule.
Nice.
Okay? And then, of course, we'll put limits on it where if you go too risky, then Exopron will say, sorry, can't generate that schedule. It's too much risk. Then you have to back off and say, so it depends on the needs of the customer with that particular project.
Okay.
And we find that's very, very important. And then if we do generate a schedule, if Exopron generates maybe a shorter schedule with higher risk, then we have a metric that tells you, and we call it a PRQ, a project risk quotient. So before you even accept the schedule, it will tell you what level of increased risk that you're assuming if you accept this schedule.
Okay.
And then it's up to the decision maker to say, okay, I'm willing to roll the dice here. I need to go after this project. It could be, I need the cash. I need the whatever. This is an important project for us. We have to get it. But you understand going in, this is a higher risk project. But when I say higher risk, it still means you still have the 94 to 95% probability of finishing on time. Okay? It just means to be aware with this project from the very beginning, just keep your eye on the ball here because we've done some things to shorten the schedule. So that in that sense, there's increased risk. But we're going to tell you when we see something you should be concerned about. And we're going to tell you precisely where you need to be concerned about, which task, very specifically. So it gives flexibility to the user to adapt to what kind of project it is, because every project's different, right?
Right, absolutely. So, I tell you what, Daniel, we're running out of time here right now, but how can people find out more about Exopron and how can they get a hold of you?
Okay, I'll give you my email address, Danny, DANNY, at Exopron.com. And Exopron is EXEPRON. So that's Danny at Exon. So being a co-founder, I founded with another person. I figured if Steve Jobs could use Steve as his email address, I could use Danny, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was a big fan of Steve Jobs. So,
Absolutely.
and by the way, our software is agnostic. It doesn't matter. We don't care if you're using a PC, an Apple, Linux.
Right.
It doesn't matter. So
Very good. Well, I appreciate it, Danny, and I thank you for your insights.
Well, I do appreciate it, Paul, and hopefully we'll get some traction off of this. And if so, I'll be more than happy to give you credit for it. And,
Well, thank you.